So hello, my friends, and welcome to What's Up. I'm John Petersen from the Arlington Institute, and we get together like this every couple of weeks. Gregg, Braden, and I to chat about whatever's on our mind and what's important and relative to this extraordinary kind of change that's going on in the world today. And so, hi, Gregg. Welcome. How are you?
Hey, John, it's good to see you. I'm sitting in our little studio here in Santa Fe, northern New Mexico, watching the world. And there's so
Yeah,
much happening in the world right now. And
go
I'm looking forward to this
sideways.
conversation with you.
Yeah, I know. It's nuts. There's so many moving parts, and it's all just accelerating so quickly that it's really hard to keep your head around it. If you're spending any time trying to honestly think about it, there are a lot of people that aren't, and they're just that are being carried downstream by it all. But so, what you been thinking about? What's up?
You know, John, right now, for some people out of left field, we had a disclosure about our relationship, the human relationship and the American relationship to not just the possibility of life beyond this world, but physical evidence of technology as well as the life forms that accompany that technology. And in some circles, it is upending everything that we have known to be true in the past. And there are other circles who are discounting all of it. Mainstream media is either not covering it or they are covering it, and they're covering it from a very skeptical or a very distorted perspective. So, you know, John, it's easy to get caught up in that conversation, and you and I have had plenty of them. The question I ask is when this is validated, as we know it will be, because we know about the physical evidence, what happens next? What happens the day after disclosure? What changes in our lives and what changes in our world? I've been thinking about that a lot. Do you give that much thought as well?
Yeah, I do. And what you're talking about, of course, is that David Grush came out on whistleblower, came out from very senior level of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and disclosed and said that we have craft and we have, and for, decades, and we've had craft and exotic materials that have not been made from somewhere else, and we literally have bodies and so on from, and we know that they're not from here, and that is the first time that the United States government is definitively, to the extent he's not in the government anymore, but clearly he's not doing this if somebody hasn't kind of told him that it's okay to talk about it at some level. You've made the point before that the government is very complex and there are lots of parts, and some don't know what the other ones are doing, and then this is kind of one of those kind of situations where probably some aspect thinks it's a good idea to talk about this and others really don't, and so they tried to put him in jail, but he beat the rap, if you will, and so he's out and talking about this, and so it raises this larger and more fundamentally significant kind of issue about what in the world and what's the implications of this. Years ago, I was told that there was a possibility that there was going to be a disclosure event back in 92 or something like that. I don't remember when it was, but maybe it was 96. I don't remember. And I never figured out whether they were just feeding me this stuff to try to find out what I'd do with it and who I'd tell and whatever. But what I did was I brought together very quietly a small group of very high level people from different areas, from the military, from the press, from the science, from the intelligence community, and others that were personal friends of mine from politics. And I literally, in some cases, said, "Show up next Tuesday at 1 o'clock, and I'm not telling you what's happening, but you just show up. It's going to be worth your while." And I had the kind of relationships that these folks would do that, and so they showed up, and what we did was an afternoon scenario planning process to try to identify what the potential implications of this might be. We did implications analysis, and we did it using some technology that Joel Barker, called the
Yeah.
Implications Wheel, Joel design. And I swore them all to secrecy. They can't tell anybody who else was in the room and all that kind of stuff. And we spent all afternoon kind of systematically going through and analyzing all of the potential implications. And the bottom line was very kind of galvanizing, kind of really got our attention, because when we got finished with this thing, when we got to the end, there were, if you consider a certain path through this network as a scenario, there were something like 38 scenarios that we had that, you know, again, that related to science and technology and religion and other such things, politics. And there were only 2 or 3 of all of those things that didn't blow up the local world symbolically in one way or another. The whole disclosure process was fraught with potholes at best and you know, cliffs at worst, where you would if you and the 3 scenarios that worked, you just had to line everything up, had to 1, 2, 3, 4, all had to just line up perfectly in order for the thing to come out and be relatively benign on the back end of the whole thing. And there were a number of people in that room who were very knowledgeable about this whole subject, you know, came from other places. And they all just sat there. They told me this for years since then. They said that was one of the most profound things I ever went into, because there are all kinds of people running around saying, just disclose this and make it come out. And they've never thought about the potential downstream implications of all of this. They're very careful in trying to, in the way that they try to navigate through all of this, because they know that it could just really go sideways pretty quickly. At the same time, there clearly is some kind of a push from inside, externally, internally. I don't know how what it is and how it works, but there's an imperative, a growing imperative, whether it's the aliens that are wanting to talk, I don't know, that are saying, you know, we got to get this out. So it's a real kind of interesting minefield going forward into this space.
John, I wish I had been in that meeting that you had back then. I would have loved to been there and been part of that.
That was
You know,
pre-Gregg. Yeah.
When I think about this, of course, I don't think it's any surprise to anyone in our community that we're not alone. And I don't think it's a surprise to most cultures. Many of the indigenous cultures that I've spent time with in the last, I don't know, I've been traveling over 50 years now. They make room in their culture and their society for their family and their community that is not on this earth. First time you and I met, you picked me up in Washington, D.C. I had just spoken at the D.C. Convention Center, and there's a man that had come in, 2 men, but only one of them approached me during the conference, and they were the, you know, typical all black suits. They had dark sunglasses on indoors, which was a little unnerving to me. You know, a little curly Q earpiece, and the guy came up to the stage. And just before the break, John, I'd made a statement that I'd never made at any of my conferences before, because I was talking about human DNA. I said, this is the message that we now know exists within human DNA. And then I said, I would love to have some DNA from life that's not from this planet to see if their genome has the same message. Let's take a break. And so the guy, when he approached me, he came up and he said, I asked him the question, you know, I said, you guys have a problem with me talking about this stuff? And he said he didn't. And then he gave me a piece of paper and he said, when you're ready for that DNA from beyond this planet, call one of these numbers. And there were three phone numbers. There's a White House number, a Pentagon number, and a private number. I wasn't ready to make that phone call at that time. I didn't, for a number of reasons, I didn't make that phone call. So it told me that we had the physical evidence. when we talk about that physical evidence, it comes from a number of places. We hear a lot about crash sites. What you rarely hear about is there have been at least 2 archaeological recoveries of craft that are not from this world, that were very intact and that were presumably functional. By the time they crash, I don't know how much functionality remains, and how much of that
Where was
information
that? Where was that?
One of them was in Egypt, and the other one is in Antarctica, and that is the one that's very controversial right now. So, and those are 2 that I know about. There may be others, certainly. I believe there are 33 recovered craft, and I don't know that they are all the product of crashes. We have the technology to take them down through non-conventional scalar weaponry. It's going to happen. There's a disclosure that's happening now, and it's not happening within a vacuum. So I think when I think about this and the timing, and there are so many efforts to restructure the systems of the earth and to reset social systems and financial systems, and now if they are being built around the implications of this threat that we see, that's triggering the change in the climate the way it has in the past, and all the things that go with that, this disclosure may open the door to the technologies that would help avert some of the greatest humanitarian crises that we've ever seen. And by making that technology available, making it public to the greater scientific community to apply to these problems. And I think that's been one of the issues I mentioned in our quartet program. One of the reasons that this information has been kept secret is because of 2 studies that were done way back in the 1960s. One was by the Rand Corporation, and the other one, I don't know who I mentioned it.
Brookings.
The Brookings Institute. And their conclusions were based on what we knew back in the 60s about the disruptive nature. They were looking at anthropological studies of other cultures who believed that they had a solid understanding of their place in the world. And when those understandings were disrupted, those cultures disintegrated. And so the conclusions were drawn that the same thing would happen on a global basis. That was a different time. And I think we're beyond that, John. And I don't necessarily think that's what would happen now.
Yeah,
but that's
but the principles are the same. And if you have a giant kind of seismic disruption of this magnitude, you would have to reconstitute an intellectual framework, an existential framework, if you will, for the emergent new world that comes out of the back end of the thing. I always end up kind of thinking about it almost like the framers of the Constitution for the United States way back when they were trying to structure a whole new world and a new social relationship and economic and governmental and other kind of things. I mean, that's what we're going to have to do.
I think it's all about the way it's done. If we had global leaders that came together out of their genuine love and care for their perspective or respective nations, and they came together and they said to the people of the earth, we have this opportunity to come together and do great and beautiful things through our humanness, and to open ourselves to this deeper relationship with forms of life that have been here longer than we have, that understand more than we do. If something like that were done, it could be a great and beautiful thing. So I think that we have the consciousness to do this in a good way. And I really appreciate, John, you taking the opportunity. I know we're nearing the end of our time here, but I think it's an important conversation to be continued, obviously, as we learn more. I think I'd like to I love the way you think, and you certainly have a history and a background with people that really open the door to some very deep and beautiful perspectives on all this. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. This is an exciting time, and it's when do you get a chance to help build a new world after all? So it's kind of cool. So thanks a lot. I very much appreciate these conversations. And for those of you who are viewing and with us today, thank you very much for being with us. We come to you from the Arlington Institute here in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, our little resort town that's about 100 miles down the road from Washington and Baltimore. And we carry forth here with a variety of programs, all kind of oriented toward and focused on this big change and kind of what it might be and how it might happen between now and then, and how do you get from here to there? How do you prepare yourself and so on? And you can find out all the information about what we do at arlingtoninstitute.org. And as much as it pains me to suggest that you change your behavior based upon Google, I would like to encourage you, please, to give us a thumbs up and, and share it with your friends and all of those kinds of things that help make the system all work for us, because it's the only system we got right now. So thanks so much, and we'll see you all. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you so much.